First story. I still remember the day I got the job offer. It felt surreal. I had been dreaming of working at this company for years, a major tech firm, the kind you tell your friends and family about, and they instantly know how cool it is. The kind of job that makes you feel like you've made it. So when the email came through offering me a position, I thought my life was about to change for the better. Let's rewind a bit. I'm James, a software engineer who had been working at a mid-sized company for a few years. It was okay. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady, and the office environment was, well, tolerable. But you know that feeling when you're not where you're supposed to be? That's how I felt. I needed something more exciting, more challenging. I'd been eyeing this particular tech firm for months, maybe even years. They were one of those companies that everyone in my industry wanted to work for: great pay, benefits, and above all, prestige. If you worked there, you were seen as legit. So I applied. It was a long shot, but I figured, why not? I polished my resume, spent hours on a personalized cover letter, and even reached out to a couple of contacts I had on LinkedIn who worked there. Weeks went by, and I forgot about it. I was knee-deep in some boring project at my current job when I saw the email notification. Subject line: interview invitation. Fast forward a few weeks, and after multiple rounds of interviews, technical, behavioral, you name it, I got the job. They offered me more money than I'd ever made before. I was ecstatic. The first few months were amazing. The work was challenging, the people were smart, and I was constantly learning. It felt like I was finally in the right place. But then, slowly, things started to change. It wasn't the job itself, I loved the work, but the culture. This company prided itself on being innovative and disruptive, but that translated to a constant state of chaos. There was an expectation to be available at all hours, even on weekends. Meetings were scheduled at 7 p.m., and the pressure to perform was relentless. At first, I tried to keep up. I stayed late, answered emails on the weekends, and even skipped out on plans with friends and family to meet deadlines. But after a while, I started burning out. I wasn't sleeping well, my stress levels were through the roof, and I began resenting the job I had once been so excited about. My productivity started to slip, and my manager noticed. I tried to talk to my boss about it. I told him I was struggling with the workload and asked if there was any way to prioritize better or adjust deadlines. His response? "This is what it takes to work here, James. If you can't handle it, maybe this isn't the right place for you." That hit hard. I'd fought so hard to get this job, and now I was being told I couldn't cut it. I went home that night and seriously considered quitting. But something in me wouldn't let go that easily. I had worked too hard to walk away. So, I decided to stick it out. That decision was probably the worst one I've ever made. A few weeks later, I got assigned to a major project, the kind that would make or break your reputation at the company. I knew it was my chance to prove myself. I threw everything I had into it, pulling all-nighters, skipping meals, and basically living at the office. The project was intense, but I was determined to get it done. And then, I made a mistake. A big one. Without going into too many technical details, I missed a critical error in the code that ended up costing the company a significant amount of money. It was the kind of error that shouldn't have happened, and I knew it. I was mortified. I didn't sleep that night, dreading the meeting the next day where I would have to explain what went wrong. When I walked into that conference room, the atmosphere was tense. My manager, a couple of senior engineers, and even someone from HR were there. I knew it wasn't going to be good. I took full responsibility for the mistake. I explained how it happened, what I should have done differently, and how I would ensure it didn't happen again. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter. The damage was done. A few days later, I was called into my manager's office. He didn't sugarcoat it. "James, we've decided to let you go." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. I'd been fired before I even hit my 1-year mark. The dream job I had worked so hard to get had slipped through my fingers because I couldn't handle the pressure. The next few weeks were rough. I questioned everything, my skills, my career choices, my future. But after a while, I realized something important: that job wasn't right for me. The culture, the expectations, the constant pressure, it wasn't sustainable. I wasn't the problem, the environment was. I had been so focused on the prestige of working there that I ignored all the red flags. Getting fired was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, but it taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that no job, no matter how prestigious or well-paying, is worth sacrificing your health and well-being for. It taught me that it's okay to walk away from something that isn't right for you, even if you've worked hard to get there. Now, I'm in a much better place. I found a new job at a smaller company with a healthier work-life balance. The pay isn't as high, but I'm happier, less stressed, and I actually have time for the things that matter in life. Looking back, getting fired was the best thing that could have happened to me. It forced me to reevaluate my priorities and put me on a path that was better suited for me. Sometimes, losing something you thought you wanted is the only way to find what you truly need. Second story. Let me preface this by saying that I've never been the spontaneous type. My name is Sarah, and if you asked any of my friends to describe me, they'd probably say I'm the planner of the group. The one who keeps everything organized, checks the details twice, and makes sure everyone's on the same page. But last summer, something happened that made me rethink everything about how I approached life, and more importantly, friendships. It started on an ordinary Thursday evening. I was lounging on the couch after a long day at work, browsing through Instagram, watching my friends post their summer vacation photos. I was feeling a bit envious, to be honest. My summer had been nothing but routine, work, gym, Netflix, repeat. But then I got a text from my old college friend, Jess. We hadn't spoken in a while, just the occasional like on social media posts. We used to be close in college, but life had a way of drifting us apart. The text read, "Hey, Sarah. Random question, want to go on a road trip tomorrow?" My first instinct was to decline. I had work, a stack of laundry waiting, and absolutely no time for last-minute plans. But before I could type out my usual excuse, something in me hesitated. Maybe it was the monotony of my routine, or maybe it was the fact that I missed those carefree days when Jess and I would do crazy things without thinking twice. Either way, I responded with a simple, "Where to?" Jess replied almost instantly, "No idea. Just pack a bag. Let's wing it." Winging it. The idea of having no set destination or plan made my stomach churn with anxiety, but it also excited me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was exactly what I needed. Against my usual better judgment, I told her I was in. The next morning, Jess pulled up in her old beat-up Subaru, blasting some indie rock band I'd never heard of. She looked exactly like she had in college, same carefree smile, same messy hair, same energy that made you feel like anything was possible when you were with her. We hadn't talked much lately, but it felt like no time had passed at all. "Let's go," she shouted as I threw my bag into the backseat and climbed in. And just like that, we were off. We didn't have a map, we didn't have a plan, and honestly, we didn't have much of a clue where we were going. We just drove. Jess had a general idea of heading toward the mountains, but that was about it. The open road stretched out in front of us, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't care about what came next. I let go of the nagging voice in my head that told me I should be responsible, that I should check my emails, that I should do this or that. Instead, I let the wind rush through the open windows and the music fill the silence between us. As we drove, we caught up on each other's lives. Jess had been traveling a lot, working odd jobs here and there, living out of her car at times. She told me about a time she worked on a farm in Oregon for a few months, living in a tent and learning how to milk goats. It was the kind of story that would have once made me cringe with discomfort, but now, I found myself fascinated. I envied her freedom, her ability to embrace the unknown. Meanwhile, I shared how I had landed a stable corporate job, moved into a nice apartment, and had my life neatly organized. But as I said it out loud, I realized how hollow it all sounded. The job wasn't bad, the apartment was great, but something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt like somewhere along the way, I had lost a part of myself. Jess must have sensed it, because she didn't say anything judgmental or critical. She just listened. By the time the sun began to set, we found ourselves in a small mountain town. We hadn't planned to stop there, but we were both starving and needed a break. The town had a single diner, the kind that looks like it hasn't changed in 50 years, complete with checkered tablecloths and a neon sign that flickered on and off. We grabbed a booth by the window, ordered burgers and fries, and kept talking. That night, something unexpected happened. After dinner, we decided to check into a cheap motel, nothing fancy, just a place to crash. But instead of going straight to bed, we grabbed a couple of blankets from the car and went outside to sit under the stars. I don't know if it was the quiet of the night or the fact that we were far away from the distractions of everyday life, but Jess opened up to me in a way she hadn't before. She told me about a rough breakup she had gone through a year ago, how she'd been struggling to figure out what she wanted in life. She admitted that her constant traveling wasn't just about seeking adventure, but also about running away from dealing with her feelings. It was a side of Jess I had never seen before, vulnerable, uncertain, raw. And in return, I found myself sharing things I hadn't even admitted to myself. I told her about how lonely I'd been feeling, despite having a stable job and everything I thought I wanted. I confessed that I wasn't sure if I was truly happy, or if I was just going through the motions. We sat there for hours, talking about our fears, our regrets, our dreams. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't alone in those feelings. Jess and I were in completely different places in our lives, but in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was the connection we had, the kind of friendship that goes beyond words, beyond time, beyond distance. The next morning, we didn't rush to leave. We had nowhere to be, and for once, I was okay with that. We drove back slowly, taking random detours, stopping at roadside stands to buy fresh peaches, and pulling over to take photos of the stunning landscapes. By the time we got back home, I felt different. Lighter. Like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That road trip, as unplanned and chaotic as it was, reminded me of the importance of letting go sometimes, of trusting the journey, even when you don't know where it's taking you. And most importantly, it reminded me that true friendship isn't about how often you see someone or how much you talk, it's about being there for each other when it really matters. Jess and I still don't talk every day, and we live in different cities now. But that trip brought us closer than ever. It taught me that sometimes, the best things in life aren't planned, they just happen when you're open to the possibilities. So, here's to more unplanned road trips, more deep conversations under the stars, and more friendships that stand the test of time. Third story. I wasn't having a good day. Actually, scratch that, I was having one of the worst days of my life. My name's Alex, and this happened about 3 years ago, but it still sticks with me like it was yesterday. It all started when I woke up late for work. My alarm didn't go off, or maybe it did, and I just slept through it. Either way, by the time I rolled out of bed, I only had 20 minutes to shower, get dressed, and make it to the office. My heart was already racing as I scrambled through my closet, grabbed the first shirt I could find, and threw on some pants that definitely needed ironing. I didn't even have time for coffee, and trust me, I'm not someone who functions well without caffeine. The commute was worse than usual. Traffic was at a standstill, and I spent the next 45 minutes inching along in my car, checking the clock every 2 minutes, knowing I was going to miss the morning meeting. My boss, Lisa, had already warned me about being late one too many times, and I knew this was the last straw. I could practically feel the email from HR waiting in my inbox. By the time I got to the office, I was drenched in sweat from sprinting from the parking lot, only to find out that the meeting had already started without me. Great! I shuffled into the conference room, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, but all eyes were on me. Lisa shot me that look, you know, the one that says, "We're going to talk after this." I sat down, trying to focus, but my mind was spinning. As the day went on, it didn't get any better. I was assigned a last-minute project that was due by the end of the day, and of course, the system crashed right when I was in the middle of it. Nothing was working, and I could feel the frustration bubbling up inside me. I wanted to scream, but I held it in. Barely. Around lunchtime, I decided to step out to get some fresh air. I needed a break, just 5 minutes to clear my head. I walked to the little sandwich shop around the corner, ordered my usual turkey club, and headed back to the office. But, of course, as I was juggling my phone, wallet, and the sandwich, the entire thing slipped out of my hands and splattered onto the sidewalk. I stared at the mess for a solid 10 seconds, feeling the anger rising in my chest. I was ready to give up on the day. I hadn't had a single win since I opened my eyes that morning. It felt like the universe was actively working against me. That's when it happened. I was kneeling down, trying to salvage what was left of my sandwich, when a guy I'd never seen before walked up. He must have noticed the defeated look on my face because he stopped, looked at the mess on the ground, and said, "Hey, rough day?" I laughed bitterly and nodded. "Yeah, you could say that." Without another word, he reached into his wallet, pulled out a $10 bill, and handed it to me. "Here, go grab another one." At first, I didn't know what to say. It was such a simple gesture, but I wasn't used to random acts of kindness like that. "You don't have to do that," I said, shaking my head. But he smiled and waved it off. "Seriously, I insist. I've been there. Trust me, it'll get better." I didn't know what to do. My instinct was to refuse. Who just gives money to a stranger like that? But the way he said it, so casual and genuine, made me realize he wasn't doing it out of pity. He was just being kind. "Thanks," I managed to say, taking the money. He gave me a small nod, then walked off like it was nothing, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there for a moment, holding the crumpled bill in my hand, feeling a little lighter. It wasn't about the money or the sandwich anymore. It was the fact that someone, a complete stranger, saw I was struggling and decided to do something nice. It was such a small thing, but it shifted something in me. I went back to the sandwich shop, got a new turkey club, and as I sat down to eat, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. The day hadn't magically gotten better, but my perspective had. I still had a lot to deal with at work, but somehow, it didn't feel as overwhelming. I finished my sandwich, walked back to the office, and tackled the rest of the day with a little more patience and a lot less frustration. By the time I left the office that evening, I was still behind on a few things, but Lisa didn't ream me out the way I expected. She just asked if everything was okay, and for the first time in a while, I told her the truth. I said I'd been having a rough time balancing everything, and to my surprise, she listened. We worked out a plan to help me get back on track, and I left the office that day feeling hopeful. I never saw that guy again, and I don't know if he ever realized the impact of his small act of kindness. But it made me think about how often we get caught up in our own stress and forget that everyone else is fighting their own battles, too. That $10 bill didn't just buy me another sandwich, it reminded me that a little kindness can go a long way. Now, whenever I see someone who looks like they're having a rough day, whether it's a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger, I try to do something small to help. It doesn't have to be much. Sometimes, it's just offering a smile, holding the door, or paying for someone's coffee. It's those little moments that can make the difference. Looking back, that day taught me something important. Life is hard, and there are days when everything feels like it's going wrong. But sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can turn everything around. You never know how much someone might need it, just like I did.